But welcome everybody. Thank you for coming today. I am Robin with Stone. A couple of things before we start. I sent a link hopefully to everybody that works now to get credit for the course. So let me know if this is not issues and we'll try and troubleshoot that. We are doing a little bit of a giveaway. So I'm going to pass around the information. We're going to do the drawing at the end. We're giving away one wine treat and I'm ordering a custom stuff because we excited about it. So, okay, so and I want to introduce Danny, the buyer from Ciot. They're our supplier. They're going to talk to you a bit and show rolling.
Thanks for attending, folks. We appreciate you coming to our spirit event today. We'd like to give a big round of applause for their hosting this today. First up is Alison Mullins. She's an expert in natural stone, association with the Marble Stone Institute. I'm going to let her talk a little bit more about her accomplishments. She's well known in the industry, and I'm sure she's going to deliver a fantastic CEU presentation for you today on natural stone and all of its do's and don'ts and wonderfulness. And I will be following up with a presentation on ultra compact materials and engineered surfaces. Okay, so Alison, take it away. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys. I hope you can see me. I'm not sure if you can see me or hopefully you can just hear me. Welcome.
We can see you and hear you.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Welcome to this little presentation. This is a Natural Stone Institute course called Considerations for Marble, Granite, Quartzite, and Soapstone. I'm very lucky and fortunate to be a presenter for Natural Stone Institute actually since about 2018. Super excited to be working with my friends at both Firenze and Ciot. I've known these companies for a long time, so happy to be here. I am coming into you from Miami, Florida, and you don't need to know a lot of my accomplishments, but I actually own my own company called Rep Methods, and I do some independent consulting in the stone industry with a beautiful company. I'm here in Miami with Grassi Pietri, limestone from Italy. So my speaking experience and my work in this industry goes back I'm just under 15 years, and so happy to be here for you today. I know we had some difficulty getting the certificate situation. This is an AIA, IDCEC, NKBA, LACES registered course, and the Natural Stone Institute uses the program CEU events, and we'll go over that code to get your certificate again once we get to the end of the presentation. And I'm super sorry for the inconvenience, but the registration process helps to keep us organized and to make sure that everybody gets the certificates that they need, because we all know how important your credits are to you. Natural Stone Institute is so happy to be an IDCEC and AIA provider, and we are really excited to bring you some information today. So today we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about natural stone applications. And this course is sort of an advanced. We know you as the audience, you have experience already working with stone products and natural materials, but maybe I can help build for you today a little bit more understanding about some of the chemical properties of natural stone. And I love this presentation because it goes into a lot of the logistics. And as we all know, logistics in natural stone has been a lot of fun topic of conversation over the last few years. And so I want to show you also the ability to be able to learn about some aesthetics and applications that you can use natural stone for your projects. First, we're going to talk a little bit about those characteristics. We're going to talk about some equipment. We're going to talk about sealing and care and maintenance, natural stone versus artificial stones, and look at some design trends. The first up right here is we'll talk about the difference between what is really a natural stone and an engineered material. Now, I got in trouble myself. I'm going to share this little story with you because I'm presenting at the Amazing Race at TICE in 2024. Got a lot of different speaking opportunities going on there. And we have a little game that we were going to play. And my proposed game was to actually use some of the limestone and make some homemade terrazzo. And I'm not sure about you guys. Oh, hello, sir. If you could just make sure you put yourself on mute. If you're just joining us online, please make sure that you've muted yourself. Anyway, so back to the conversation. And I even got in trouble with the Natural Stone Institute because I was proposing that we make a little bit of terrazzo with the limestone product. And they said, Alison, once you change the characteristic of the stone, it is no longer considered natural. So even engineered products that are out in the marketplace, that while they might have some contents that are considered natural, we don't call those natural stones. The only materials that you can consider to be 100% natural have been unaltered in the manufacturing process, that is outside of sealers or topical agent treatments. So the stone itself needs to be unaltered. Now, today we're going to split the stones into their ultimate categories. If there are two categories of stone, and most people think granite, quartzite, marble, etc., but actually it's silicious stones and calcareous stones. If I was in person with you guys today, which I wish I was, I would ask you in the audience, does anybody know what silicious means? And I can't really hear or see you today, so we're going to have to just give you the answer. So silicious stones means that it started in the earth as silica, sand. So the basis for those materials before they come into heat and pressure from the earth's core and the crust is they actually started out from that base mineral silica. Okay, so on the screen you have in front of you granite, quartzite, and soapstone. Can anybody name any other stones from the silicious category? That's okay. We'll move on today. I know. I love to do this presentation even more in person because it's so much more fun. The next category is calcareous stones. I'm pretty sure you guys already can guess what is the base mineral for calcareous stones. Calcium. It's just like where I'm working with limestone this week. Limestone, travertine, marble, these materials first start in the earth as a calcium mineral-based material. Now, of course, there's other little additives that go on that help give it its color or some mineral content. You might actually have some iron ore oxides that are inside these materials. But the base mineral, it's going to start out as calcium. Now let's talk about absorption rates on materials. This comes up a lot nowadays, especially when it comes to sealing and to application areas. On the screen for you, the Natural Stone Institute is providing you some certified tested absorption ratings, compressive stink, and abrasion characteristics for each of these stones. Now, my job is to I want to call your attention to some things that you might not have realized about these stones. For instance, take a look at that Calcutta Danby marble. How many of you thought that the absorption rate could be that low on a marble? Probably not. Same thing with serpentine. Did you guys know that serpentine is almost considered non-porous? Look at that absorption rating. These are amazing materials that you actually can use in areas in your design projects that maybe you didn't even realize. And I've seen some serpentine where you can actually correct any staining that might occur. You can actually take out the minerals that are applied to that stone. These are really, really versatile materials. And we want you to think of these for your projects because surprisingly, they're stronger and less absorbent than you might have previously believed. On the next screen, same thing here. These are classic stones that many of you already know. Calcutta gold, Bianco Carrera, a Thasos marble. But did you know that Thasos had this medium absorption rating, this Greek material? It's all white. There's some competition materials in the marketplace, but who knew that it comes in only at 0.18%? And now, obviously, I want you guys to remember that every time you're working with a material, those absorption rates can vary because depending on where the material is taken out of the quarry, how dense is that area, it's going to change. But these are your average performance ratings for these materials. So it's kind of cool to know that maybe they're not quite as absorbed as we thought. On the next screen here, we'll go through quickly another great idea, statuary, which comes from the Carrara quarry. You know, Carrara and statuario, these materials are born right next to each other. They were made in the earth just across one ridge from another ridge. And surprisingly, look at the difference in the absorption ratings, a 0.16 and Bianco Carrara being 0.115. Kind of amazing, right? Different quarries, same mountain, different ratings. I'd love to hear your questions today, but in the effort of time, we're just going to keep going and talk about your different commercial classifications as well. Has anybody ever heard of a gabbro or a gneiss? Gabbros are really interesting stones, mostly your absolute black, which you maybe have used around fireplaces or outdoor settings. That is actually not a granite. It's a gabbro. And this classification of stone has a really, really dense characteristic. So I wanted to call out some points. Another interesting stone, do you know what a gneiss is? A gneiss is actually a rock that is a granite that then encountered heat. And so in actuality, it's almost like a vulcanized granite, which is why maybe in Firenze's slab yard, they might have some interesting materials that look like granite, but they have a wavy vein that's similar to a marble look. These materials, it's quite possible that they are not a granite, but they're actually a gneiss. So you guys can write to me if you have any more questions about this, and we're going to keep moving today. Let's talk a little bit about equipment for fabrication and installation. Now, I doubt that today is your first day going into your fabricator's warehouse or studio, but how many of you, I wish I could see your hands right now, how many of you have actually been to a quarry? I'm looking at this tiny little picture on my screen. Have you been inside a quarry? You can raise your hand for me. Okay, maybe not. Well, as you can see here on the screen, we have a picture of what is a gallery quarry, and you've got a big bobcat machinery who's moving the block and taking it out from inside the quarry. Let's talk a little bit about that process of how these materials get from the quarry to a warehouse like Firenze. Oops, sorry, let me back up here. First step is cutting that block. So it's going to be extracted by this big piece of equipment. It's going to be moved to a very small version of an 18-wheeler, like what we know in America as a truck. In Italy, they actually have smaller versions of these. They're like mini 18-wheelers. And those are the block trucks. They're going to take it from the quarry over to the factory where it's going to get trimmed and shaped and turned and investigated, and they're going to decide how they're going to process this material. Is it going to be cut to size material? Is it going to get turned into slabs? Maybe if it's a small misshapen block, it might actually end up going to a tile supplier because they don't need bigger pieces. And the machinery there is going to, it's probably a wire saw or a gang saw, depends on the material. It's going to cut them into the appropriate thickness. Now for warehousing slabs, we're most used to seeing 2 cm and 3 cm materials. But really and truthfully, on these new fandangled wire saws or the old gang saws, the block can be cut to any thickness as long as it's movable. So you can actually have 5 cm, 8 cm, 12 cm. And this is why, depending on the type of material for like cut to size project, you can actually cut the entire project from one block of material. Now, after the slabs have been processed, they usually need to dry out for a little bit and analyze what's inside. Are there any veins? Are there any deposits? And many times that's going to determine the finish. You, as the customer, also can determine the finish. So if Firenze is ordering polished or honed or leathered, we're all familiar with these finishes, but there are lots of finishes that can be chosen for finishing on slabs. Maybe you want to add some flamed or you want to do some texture. Again, that's going to be up to the ultimate end user and how they order the material, or it's going to be up to the factory to say, hey, this block, maybe it has quite a bit of inclusions. We might want to leather and flame this particular material to give it some increased strength and durability. Slab handling. Once the finished bundles of slabs are created, they are going to be vertically packed, and usually depending on the country of origin, it could be wood frames, and they're going to pack them vertically in order to put them onto the container box, because that's how ultimately those slabs are going to arrive to us here in the United States. Now, I love this presentation, and when I've done it before, it's so much fun to hop from this slide to this slide. Why do you think I get excited about that? Possibly because they're missing a big part of the logistics, transportation. I mean, the slabs just don't go from the factory right to the yard. There's a whole list of people and companies that are involved in that transportation process, making sure that the materials are going to get from point A to point B. If it's a material that's being produced over in Brazil or Italy, obviously they have to travel on a boat. If we are buying domestic material, like from Vermont or from Danby quarries, there's still going to be logistics and trucking and transportation all happening before it arrives to the stone yard. Now, my goal in educating you as the architects and designers involved in these projects is that so you kind of have a better understanding of like even the samples that you're looking at and you're designing with. You might be looking at a piece that's this big, and we'd love to teach that there's so much involved in the selection of stone and what that final look is going to be. That way, the next time you're walking through a warehouse slab gallery, whether it's indoor or outdoor, you can have a better appreciation of why the finish was chosen for that particular material. Why did the producer actually decide to go ahead and hone this or leather that material? Take a look at these materials almost like they're pieces of artwork, because each one was chosen in that finish because of the type of stone, the density, the porosity, the inclusions, all make a difference in the ultimate decisions of your materials. Now, this slide is actually talking about slab safety. And just another note, because we've definitely seen some accidents in our industry in the last couple of years, that you always want to follow the warehouse rules before you're entering into any slab yard or slab situations. We have to make sure that we're following safety first, because to believe it or not, these slabs, when they're moving around, it's like a 10,000-pound elephant hanging in the air. And if that thing falls on you or falls anywhere close to you, it can be a deadly disaster. So we want to promote some safety. Now let's get on to the project materials and working with your fabricator. We want to make sure that you're understanding those processes and the machinery involved in making sure that you get the perfect installation for your client. Templating. Now, this presentation was probably written about 5, 6 years ago, and the advancements that have come out in the last 10 years on laser templating is amazing. But I want to make sure to drive home. You don't have to have a laser templater in order to make a good project for your customer. In fact, some of the ancient methods of using wood or paper, actually drawing out the space and then moving that over to the slab, it might be considered old-fashioned today, but it's still a very valid and useful resource, just like in working wood. It's going to make sure that the yield is appropriate and it's just transferred over to the material. But with laser templating, computer-aided design, CNC, computer-operated equipment, layouts are even easier than ever before. Now, in my experience working with fabricators, it doesn't matter if you have fancy equipment like this, or you have a guy who specializes in laying out that old wooden template right on the slab to make sure that your veins are being put together in the right place, that the corners are matching, that you've got enough yield in order to make that turn. In the end of the day, I think it's up to the customer and the designer involved on how they want the right equipment to be used for this particular job. So you get to make that decision for yourself, and it should help you identify your subcontractor in the end based on the methodology that they use in their shop. There's no right or wrong answer. I think sometimes it just has to deal with how detailed is the job, how custom is the cutting, and what is the end result that your client is looking for. Perhaps the old wooden templating might be the best way to achieve the closest original look. You never know. It's important to recognize that even with the new digital age, we have to account for veined material. Now, this is something that happens actually more often than I'd like to see. I've had a lot of subcontractors and over the years run into mistakes where perhaps the young designer, the young sales agent didn't account for veined material and corners. But always remember that when you're working with beautiful pieces of art like natural stone, that you want to let that subcontractor help you make the turns in your design. You may or may not need more material than you originally estimated in order to achieve the look that your client is going for. And this is just a common step that sometimes gets missed in the design process, especially now that big, bold, patterned materials are coming back in our design aesthetic, which we'll talk about a little bit more. As I mentioned before, with CNC equipment, these things are fabulous. They've really changed the industry. The ability to plug your measurements into a computer and have the machine just go has transformed the stone business. Now they have also these beautiful machines that are like 5-axis CNC machines, which make things like carving furniture pieces from stone or balusters or exterior elements of design or your fireplaces, specialty equipment that can do more with natural stone than ever before. Super cool. If you've never seen a water jet, I think by now, hopefully you've heard of a water jet. I mean, when I started in the industry 15 years ago, nobody had these. Maybe like one guy. I mean, I was serious. Like to have a water jet in your fabrication shop was just unheard of. It's a very expensive piece of equipment. Used in combination with the CNCs allows for a fabricator, an installer to create just about any design into the surface of your material. Now it's 2023, and nowadays I find the more shops that I might visit, working on a project here or there, it's much more common. People have made the investment. They've got that water jet in place. And I'm here, I think, just to promote the idea that in today's design world, we're getting more and more technical with what we're putting into kitchens. Waterfall edges, miters, these veined turning corners, things like that. I'm even seeing they're building stone walls that hide the spices on the backsplash. The more technical that element of design, sometimes having this higher end piece of equipment is necessary to get tighter seams and a better aesthetic end result. You, as the contractor, the designer, the architect, you're in control of the subcontractor. You have a choice. I encourage all of you, before making a decision on who you're going to use for your final project, take a tour. Go visit the shop. See what kind of equipment they're running. And take somebody with you, perhaps a rep from your local warehouse who knows what they're looking at and has an idea of the process that your subcontractors put into place. Sound like a good plan? I hope so. This is an edge profile machine. So this is one of those pieces of equipment that if you went to a fab shop by yourself and you don't know what you're looking at, that's okay. But in big commercial size shops, and you don't have to be a huge factory, but if they're doing volume work, if you see one of these pieces of equipment in a shop, that lets you know that this company takes pride in taking some of the hand work off of the warehouse floor. So this machine actually can replicate what takes many, many man hours to produce by hand. So any shop that has made an investment into an edge profile machine is allowing the machine to take over some of that human work, which is really, really cool. It's also a necessary piece of equipment for someone who's doing repetitive pieces of cutting, like for a builder or a commercial installation. If you're working on a hotel with 2,000 vanities for the bathrooms, I mean, how much manpower can you relieve by having a machine do all of those edge profiles for you for the backsplash? So this machine actually is just really about helping the flow of a shop and keeping the handwork away from the employees. All right, moving on into some care and maintenance conversation. I hate to be rushed today, you guys, but I want to make sure to be able to finish and within a good time. As I talked a little bit about the finishing process on the slabs, and this is one of my favorite subjects in working with stone. Personally, when I'm working with architects or designers, I love talking about finishes because every stone can change. The entire look can change just by changing the finish. So here on the slide for you, you've got 3 of the most common. And I think, no, they don't include some other ones, but I encourage you to talk to your sales reps and ask them, about specialty finishes for a future project. We have to deal with minimums and finding the right supplier and what are we doing for this project? But, if you're working on a whole house and you're already buying material and you need something customized, typically that's going to be done in the factory at the plant where they take in the blocks. And just about any texture and finish can be applied, and we can get creative here as well. It's super, super cool. But for kitchen tops and some of the most basic, you're going to see polished, toned, and leathered. Sometimes you might see flamed floating around, but typically not as much on your average showroom floor. I don't think I'm teaching you guys any of that information you didn't already have, so very cool. So finding that subcontractor, working with your subcontractor, you guys have the right and the ability to make sure that you're on site and your subcontractor is sort of an extension of your design. Make them a team player. When you find that right fit, when you find that company that works best with you, you want to make sure that they, are they doing proper cleanup? Are they cutting on site or are they doing most of the work in the shop? Nowadays, there's some safety issues that I don't really want to get into, but we want to try to make sure that the majority of the cutting and the work is completed in a safe environment for the employees, which that is going to be at the fabrication shop. Only mild finishes and tweaking should be done on the job site. That's going to make both you, your subcontractor, and your customer happier in the long run, because trying to do a lot of work on site creates a giant mess. And then you want to make sure that when you're choosing a subcontractor, that they're thinking ahead for you and talking about the sealing process for natural stone. Talk a little bit more about that later. This slide talks about rodding. How many of you could, and maybe can see if you want to raise your hand, have you had a steel rod placed in the front of the sink area to help brace it for transport? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay. Well, the good news is this was a practice that started in the early 2000s. Companies would actually route out a hole underneath the cut kitchen top and place a rod there, silicone it in place, and it did two things. It made sure that while that cut piece of stone was transporting from the fabrication shop to the home, it didn't break, because as I can annotate here for you guys. I think you can see my, whoops. As you can see here on the screen, that tiny little piece of area can become very fragile after it's been cut. So they used to rod and put things in place, put these steel rods in place to give it some extra support. We're now finding, a little bit later, 2023, we're now finding that in those early 2000 homes, it's been 20 years, those rods are disintegrating and they're breaking. So they've actually started to, in the industry, work on other methods to keep the sink piece from breaking in transport and during installation without using the rods. So you want to talk to your subcontractor about how they treat that kitchen sink area and how do they make sure that really beautiful and expensive piece of stone that your customer spent 6 months picking out gets fabricated and gets to the job site in one piece. Rules for thought, food for thought. Finding that subcontractor. How do they cut and prepare for seams? This also goes back to the previous conversation about digital templating, layouts. Are we being considerate of the veins and material? And listen, nowadays, even if it's something in engineered, they have veins too. And we want to be very considerate about how seams are finished. And in natural stone, we believe, and according to the Institute's manual, that essentially a seam should not be thicker than the width of a quarter. So if you take a quarter out of your purse and put it onto the seam, that is within tolerance. Taking a look at how your subcontractor, do they have an option for a European seam, which is virtually invisible. It's a new technology. There's equipment that has been developed to suction the pieces together and make that seam virtually disappear. Just this week, I was in a beautiful showroom here in Miami. The kitchen top was produced in Italy. It was a very wild patterned stone. Rosa, what was the name of this stone? Anyway, wild patterned stone. And they actually created a scalloped edge seam in the middle of the countertop. But because the material was so busy, it virtually disappeared. Those two pieces coming together using this scalloped seam made it invisible. You couldn't see the seam until somebody pointed it out. So speaking with your subcontractor, making sure you're in good conversation about how they're going to handle that process for each material is very, very important. Are they caulking properly at the backsplash? What kind of sealers are they using to treat the stone before they walk away? All of these are excellent questions that you should be prepared to ask when you're with your subcontractor on the job site. So moving on quickly to the care and maintenance section. If you don't know what you're doing, and that's okay, we all have to learn, there is a great resource for you that is free from the Natural Stone Institute. You can actually go and get the Dimensional Stone Design Manual. I'll do that promotion because once you have that in your files, you can use the Control F and you can search for things like seam tolerances, lippage, shower installations with natural stone, maybe tub surrounds. And there's lots of advice to help you know what you're doing when it comes to natural materials, if there's ever any question. And of course, I encourage you to use your resources local to you. You're all sitting in this beautiful warehouse with great salespeople, extremely knowledgeable staff, and trust me, they also know who to ask and to help find information for you. So referring to a beautiful design manual like this Dimensional Stone will help you answer some questions. And another freebie that's not an NSI course, I'll just give to you too. If you haven't ever used the TCNA, you guys can write this down. TCNA, that's the Tile Council of North America. They have an installation manual that you can purchase. I think it's mildly like $50 or something like this. Every office should have a copy of both of these books available to you. Inside these beautiful resources, they actually give you the drawings, what you need to actually put into your CAD software to explain to your subcontractor properly the installation methods that you want them to use. We all want everybody to try to be in a standardized setting. It makes our industry stronger and it makes your outcomes better. Now, when thinking about sealers, the stone's physical characteristics, which we talked about in the very first part of this presentation, absorption ratings, abrasion resistance, these chemical properties are very important when it comes to choosing the final treatment for your stone. Now that you know that serpentine and Danby have very little absorption rating, do you think that you might even be able to use a milder treatment on these materials? Yes, it's very possible that if you're applying any of these materials vertically, you may or may not need any treatment at all. That's why we encourage you to research the chemical propositions of each of your stones prior to choosing the sealer. And again, using your sales reps using your network. These people are here to help you find the dedicated best sealer. I'm not going to recommend the same product for limestone that I'm going to apply to a granite. Impregnators versus topical sealers. And trust me when I tell you, there are companies in our business, they make this their life work. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let me catch up with the slides. More porous stones require different types of sealers. I think this is kind of an easy answer. If you think about a sponge has lots of holes, and when you get a sponge wet, it actually absorbs better and absorbs more liquids versus something that is very tight, like an absolute black, which is a gabbro. It has almost no porosity whatsoever. It's going to require two different types of chemical additives, all right, without getting into any branding here. We're not going to do that today. And I think if I want to just keep pushing through, we're about to run out of time here. Resining often gets confused with sealing. I'm just here to set the record straight that resin is a process for filling in the holes on materials. Every material, all natural materials, when they are sliced in the saw, you can have a void, you can have pits, you can have pockmarks, and that's why we apply resin to slabs. It's really about preparing the material for its final finish. Has nothing to do with sealing. So if you leave home or leave here today with one key piece of information, just know resining does not equal sealing. Most natural stones still need to have some kind of a sealer or a treatment applied. More things to consider about sealers. Again, the type of sealer is going to be also definitive based on the porosity of the stone, and sometimes needs to be reapplied years later. We've come a long way, you guys. I'll be at the show in Vegas and Tice. There's a lot of chemical companies that are on site. If you are an installer and you want more information, I encourage you to just make a great relationship with some of these chemical companies, and they will be a godsend to you in advice on which product to use on which stone. Most common are impregnators. New also are topical coatings. Has anybody used any of that 3M like paper and plastic that goes onto a stone surface? I don't see any hands. So down here in Miami, I was talking to a designer the other day. On all her kitchen tops, she recommends that they put the film. She gets the 3M film. It's down here in South Florida. That makes sure that anybody who's throwing all these crazy parties, they don't have any worries about changing in the stone. Now, for me, I don't know if I would like the look of that. So you have to just think about this and talk it over with your client, because nowadays we have so many different products out on the marketplace to make that decision easy. And finally, a good point is especially with marble, you guys, we're getting better. There are nano sealers out there that are helping to reduce the reaction of the calcium to acid. So for those of you who don't know, calcareous stones are the biggest issue when it comes to etching. Etching is actually like a chemical burn into the stone, and it happens when you have lemon juice, red wine, Coca-Cola, balsamic vinegar, all these different things that we might already have in our kitchen. These are the ones that actually just naturally take away the polish. It's a honing technique. You actually use acid to take away the shine on stone. So it's not a bad thing. It's not hurting the stone. It's just changing the look of it. But nowadays we are seeing more sealers coming into the marketplace that help prevent this reaction. They help buy time So as a homeowner has a little bit more time to clean up, to take away what has spilled that might eventually change the finish on their marble. And it's getting better all the time, I promise. Again, there's more material, more products coming into the marketplace that are going to be helping down the road. For now, if this is a big concern for your client, when it comes to natural marble, I encourage a honed finish. If the chemical acid is burning the stone and taking away the polish and naturally honing the material, if you're presenting the marble in an already honed finish, you've kind of eliminated the problem. And very likely your homeowner or final project area is going to be much more satisfied with that honed finish. This is an example of exactly what I'm talking about. So on the left side of the screen, the marble here, you can see a little bit of a chemical burn. The look of that etching can deepen based on exposure time. So how quickly the lemon juice or the Coca-Cola is wiped away will determine how deep is the burn. Some staining, on the right-hand side of the screen. This to me looks like an oil-based stain and might require a poultice or a chemical process to actually absorb and take out the oil. This is why we use the sealers. All right. So in due use of time, I've already talked to you about what happens with the etching stone. Again, I always recommend just a honed finish. If this is going to be a concern for your client, they should still keep pretty happy as long as they have a pre-honed surface. Everyday clearing maintenance in the Institute, we still recommend soap and water. There's a lot of fancy cleaning products out on the marketplace. A lot of stone companies will try to sell you like, this cleaner or that cleaner. They're great because they're processed without chemicals that could potentially damage your stone. But in the end, if you don't have one of those, you're going to want to just use soft care soap and water. No bleach, no soft scrub with a grit, that could damage a soft stone's appearance. You guys get the idea. Nomenclature. Really quickly, I'll try to be quick. This is a great slide for those of you who, especially Mont Blanc, in the last 5 years, Mont Blanc quartzite, and some people call it Aria. I mean, there's all kinds of names, but this really, really was a hot seller in the last 5 years in residential design, especially just because it's a white quartzite. And everybody decided we can't have marble because it's too risky. I don't believe that. But they said, we can't have marble. Oh, so we're going to move over here and we're going to buy quartzite. Just for you guys to know that the nomenclature in our industry is a little silly because you have Mont Blanc engineered, you have Mont Blanc marble, which comes from Brazil, and you have Mont Blanc quartzite, which also comes from Brazil. So make sure you have a good relationship with your sales rep and you're communicating exactly the look that you're going for. So in consideration of time, common questions that we get are about price points. I didn't talk a lot about soapstone today. It's one of my favorite materials, especially because I'm originally from Virginia. If you aren't using soapstone around your fireplaces or high heat areas, maybe you're building a pizza oven outside, don't forget about this amazing material. I love soapstone. It's an awesome, awesome, awesome project material. It does require a little bit of maintenance. And as far as cost value, honestly, I'm going to be unbiased here and say that it's all over the place, these guys. Just work with your sales rep and they will help find the right material for the budget that you have set. Okay, a little sustainability piece. This is going to help keep this CEU going. Remember that when you're looking for a natural stone provider, we actually have certified stability quarries that through the Natural Stone Institute, you can log on and you can check that information. And these companies are making sure that when they're excavating from quarries, when they're processing the stones, they're recycling their water systems. I was just in Italy a few weeks ago at this beautiful plant in Vicenza, and every single drop of water used in that facility is recycled. They actually, out back where they process the slabs, they actually have a pool. All the water gets cleaned, processed, the sludge gets taken out, and the water goes right back in through the system. So they are not abusing and putting wastewater into the environment, and they're also not putting waste chemicals into the environment. The same thing goes for your subcontractors. I will remind you to check what kind of systems they have in place. There are recyclable areas that for water filtration, water treatment, to keep any types of products from entering into our ecosystem. Excuse me. All right. As I said before in the beginning of the presentation, what makes a natural stone natural? It just means that it has been unaltered other than processing into slabs. We're not changing the form of the material. We're not remolding. Terrazzo doesn't count, even though terrazzo has like a recycled component that might have some natural stone. The original material has been altered. Real natural stone maybe only has something topical applied or a mesh on the backing, but the actual stone has been cut and processed from the block. If you want to learn more about sustainability standards for our industry, the Natural Stone Council is this really cool watchdog community that has been paying a lot of attention to our standards in our industry. Now with things coming up about silica and the recycled water component, any company who has gone through and become certified is really caring about our environment. We encourage you to work with those people, work with these companies, and love the natural stones from companies that care for this process. Really quickly, I'm going to fly through some design aesthetics so that we can get you guys going and out of here today. I don't want to kill your brains. With marble countertops, because of their aesthetic properties, one of a great mistaken areas that they can be used is in bakeries, candy shops. I definitely encourage them for if you have a butler's pantry being designed in your home, because a lot of times somebody's preparing a bread or maybe they're working with some cookies and candies. You want to maybe include some marble into that design because it holds the cold. It keeps things at a certain temperature, regulated all the time. So it's really, really cool to consider for those areas. Here's some examples of the Pinnacle Award winner in a Soho townhouse. You can see on the right-hand side, we have a very monochromatic design. The stone looks very, very, very thin. And that's just simply the way that it's been inlaid into that kitchen top. One of my favorite designs here, you'll notice that kitchen top has a mitered edge, made it designed to look thicker. The architect or designer here definitely wanted it to look about 3 inches thick or 5 centimeters. And rather than actually having a 5 cm piece of stone, I believe they've used a miter element to construct this edge. You'll also notice that the sink has been custom built from the same Calcutta viola marble. I think it's a viola or an arabescato here. by design. And you'll notice that the front panel on this farm sink, the dividers are all handcrafted from slabs of stone. I've seen this done. Can actually be done domestically here on site. You don't have to order this from a factory or from a quarry. True artisans of our business can build these elements for you. Now, in this design, I want to point out the size of this island. This material is lapis lazuli. Lapis lazuli, I believe this is the one from Brazil because I don't see a lot of dirt going on. It's gorgeous royal blue color. But I'm telling you all, it's impossible to find slabs this size. If you're going to have an island like this in the design for your project, we have to be creative and book matching. Where are we going to put the seams and working with your suppliers to ensure that they can find the right sizes and multiple slabs in a design element, and working that into the project is going to help you tremendously here. This bathroom vanity, they are saying, but Natural Stone Institute is calling this white onyx. This to me, I believe it's a conglomerate precious stone material. It looks like a conglomerate of white quartz, pure white quartz, and it's been cut out of a 3 cm piece of material. The sink has been mitered into place. You've got a beautiful gem of a countertop. For sure, regardless of what material this is, there could be lighting and backlit opportunities with this type of stone. Some more resources for you guys. Now, when it comes to looking for the properties of stone, the testing is completed by your first organizations here: ASTM, ANSI, CEN, ICC, and ISO. These guys hold the testing organizations for submitting any materials and finding out what their absorbency ratings or abrasion resistance, etc. Our industry associations and our partner industry associations are important. I mentioned to you guys already the TCNA. We've got the Natural Stone Institute and the NSC. You know, Indiana Limestone, these guys are amazing. And they have an institute that talks a lot about the installation capabilities of a natural limestone product. So I encourage you, if you've got a project going on, use your local resources. And if you need help, feel free to write to me and I'll get you connected with the right people. Some more magazines here. I want you guys to choose Natural Stone 100% whenever you can. And we offer a bunch of other courses. If you're interested in that, I'd love for you to get with your Ciot rep, get with your Firenze rep, and maybe we can come and do a presentation for you as well. Now, the confusing part about your certificates. So sorry for the confusion, you guys. To get your certificates for this course, you had to first pre-register that you were coming. If you didn't do that, no problem. You will be able to use this code 1H7R and in order to get the certificates that you need for your accreditation. Thank you so much for having me today. I tried to be brief. I could talk for hours about this product because obviously, as you guys can tell, I love my materials. This is my personal cell phone. And if you have any questions or you need some resources, please feel free to reach out. Thank you, Firenze. Thank you, Ciot, for having me today.
Thank you, Alison.
Okay.
Thank you, Alison. That was fantastic. Great amount of, oh, she's gone.
I'm not gone. I'm
Oh, no,
here.
she's gone there.
No,
Oh, okay.
no. I
Thank you,
just
Alison.
closed
That was
out the
fantastic.
presentation. Yeah, if you have
Very
any
much
questions.
appreciated. You do we have a question for Alison? I have one quickly because you mentioned stone. Would you still consider that? And I'm looking at a beautiful black countertop here that's made from natural. agate, of course. Would you consider that still to be a natural stone?
Oh, I'm not the one who writes the laws, Butter. You're trying to start a war.
See? See? But would that be so, I mean, it's obviously made from cut pieces of natural material, and then it's an agglomerate. So would that be considered a natural stone, or is it no longer natural?
I mean, I think if you're really getting technical, just like the NSI did with me about my homemade terrazzo, I think it's going to be tough to call that a natural material because it has truly been cut and then pieced together.
Yes.
And it's no longer in its original format. If you were going to take a geode and place it on the countertop, that is the natural stone, but the geodes themselves being pieced together and glued together to form a countertop material kind of breaks the rules.
Okay. It's still beautiful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Are there any other questions? I just want to reiterate what Alison said about the TCNA, and there's a lot of councils out there, and these books that she mentioned, the Natural Stone Guide, the Stone Dimensional Guide, the Installation Guide, the Tile Installation Manual, absolutely important. In Canada, I sit on the board of directors for the TTMAC, which does a lot of collaborations with these associations. Everybody should have these manuals because they are set with industry standards that covers all of North America, really, so that it's a standardized protocol, that if there's an issue or you have an issue and your customer comes to you with a problem, and you've installed according to these manuals, you have absolutely no issues. And speaking of sustainability, next year in Washington, July 17 and 18, there's a huge, first of its kind, massive sustainability summit that's taking place. If you look that up, you'll find it, but worthwhile attending. But thank you very much, Alison. Are there any other questions, comments? Okay, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, bye, you guys. Thank you. See you soon.
Take care.
Or we have a pile after everybody